Hey, good morning, everybody. Um, oh, that's better, I think. Hey, I said that today I'm going to start talking about Jonah and Nahum. And before I get into this, I want to tell you why I decided to talk about these two folks, give me a little background, and what prompted this. If you remember last Saturday, I talked about Judges. Judges, book in the Bible. In the beginning, God creates people. People rebel. They don't listen. God raises up a special people, the Israelites. And God is going to save people through Israel. And Moses, one of the leaders who takes the people into the promised land, the land of Canaan, land of milk and honey that God promised them, writes the first 5 books of the Bible, the law, the Pentateuch. And this is really the beginning of the story. Well, Moses dies, Joshua brings the people in the land, and they take possession of it. Well, what happens? Everything goes good, and there's a book called Judges. Judges is what I talked about last week, a book of 12 judges, and what prompts the judges to come into existence is there's really no leader after Joshua. There's no king that they have. They're like 12 tribes, 12 separate areas within this land of Canaan. And after everything goes good, they get the land, things are great. It says, and the people did evil in the sight of God, and they forgot God. So it amazed me. 12 times this happens. The people forget God. Bad stuff happens. They cry out to God, help us, save us, and God raises up a judge. Everything gets better. Life goes on. People do evil in the sight of God, and they forget God. Bad stuff happens. Cry out to God. God raises up a judge. 12 times. It's interesting to me. How could people forget God? And I kind of related this to today because it seems like here in America, a lot of us are forgetting God, forgetting what He did, forgetting church, kind of going about our own ways. And anyway, made me think. So that's why I want to talk about forgetting God. So keep that in mind as we go through the next few weeks. The people did evil in the sight of God's eyes, and they forgot God. So, Jonah and Nahum. We'll see next week how they go together. But right now, let me tell you who they were. Jonah and the big fish. That's the story we'll go over. Nahum, both of them were called prophets, minor prophets to be precise. As Israel comes into existence, they kind of disobey. There's a lot of stuff that happens. Israel split into 2 kingdoms. Assyrian king comes, conquers a northern kingdom. Lands conquered, people scattered. Southern kingdom, they're taken captive by the Babylonians, and made slaves, captives. And that's kind of the story of Israel. And a lot of these prophets, and then Israel eventually comes back to the land of Judah, and they repopulate. Prophets were God's spokesmen to the people. So remember, what happened at this time is there is no written Bible. There's nothing that they have. Well, there is. They have the law, the first 5 books of the Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. They have the law. But what happens when they forget the law? What happens when they disobey? What happens when certain things happen? What happens when they need to be warned? Well, what God did is He raised up a prophet, a spokesperson. And God would use this person to proclaim His words and to guide the people. That was a prophet. It was a holy man. Interesting to me, none of the prophets really had it very easy. Actually, they had it really, really hard. It's kind of amazing when you look at the lives of these people. But these are the prophets, spokesmen for God, to speak for God, admonish and talk to the people and guide them. Jonah and Nahum were both prophets. So this is where we're at. The judges, remember, the people, good stuff, life is good, and it says, and they did evil in the sight of God's eyes, and they forgot their God. Keep that thought in mind. How could this happen? And what does Jonah and Nahum have to do with forgetting God? So that's kind of the basic background on what this is. Two prophets, two spokesmen for God. And we're going to look and see what this has to do as it relates to forgetting God. All right? History lesson today. Guys, that is a short version of what we're going to be studying. Next week, we're going to delve into Jonah. For those of you who know the story, we're going to review it. For those of you who don't, you might learn something. Remember, if you have questions, if you have comments, as always, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at FL Compass Church. And be sure to write us. And for all the updates, www.flcompasschurch.org. And they forgot their God and did evil in the sight of God's eyes. Sobering thought, isn't it? Have a great week. Happy Sunday, and we'll see you Wednesday.